We spend our lives praying for a miracle. In the grim darkness of the far future, every soul from the lowest manufactorum serf to the high lords of Terra whispers the same desperate plea into the void. Save us, Emperor. We sacrifice billions to the golden throne, feeding the carrion lord of the Imperium with the psychic screams of the innocent, all to keep the light of the Astronomicon burning for one more day. We believe that if he were to rise from that gilded prison, the galaxy would be saved. We believe the enemies of mankind would be swept away in a tide of golden fire. But this is the lie we tell ourselves to stave off the madness. The truth is far darker, a secret locked behind the adamantium gates of the imperial palace. If the emperor were to wake, if the corpse god were to draw breath once more, it would not be the beginning of a new golden age. It would be the death knell of the Imperium. For a god does not negotiate with the parasites who have ruled in his name for 10,000 years. He does not forgive the twisting of his truth. If the emperor rises, the Imperium falls. To understand the horror of the salvation we claim to seek, you must be willing to look into the abyss without blinking. If you are prepared to witness the burning of Terra and the shattering of the imperial truth, signal your loyalty by liking this video and subscribing to our archives. Only the faithful will be notified when the next truth is unveiled. For 10,000 years, the heartbeat of the Imperium has been a scream. It is a sound that does not register on the audiological sensors of the unaugmented, nor does it vibrate through the stale, recycled air of the hive cities. It is a psychic roar, a continuous, agonizing transmission of pure will that burns through the warp, holding back the tides of demons and lighting the way for humanity's ships. Deep within the Sanctum Imperialis, beneath the crushing weight of the Himalayan mountains, this scream is physical. It is the grinding of the Golden Throne's ancient mechanisms, the hiss of coolant venting from the reactor stacks, and the dying gasps of the 1,000 psychers sacrificed daily to sustain the carrion lord of mankind. To serve in the inner palace is to live inside a machine that is slowly eating a god. The air tastes of ozone, burnt meat, and holy incense, a cloying mixture that coats the back of the throat and never truly washes away. For the Heteron Guard, the elite custodians who stand the unending watch at the foot of the throne, the noise is silence, and the stench is purity. They have known nothing else for millennia, until today. The change does not begin with an explosion. There is no alarm klaxon, no chaotic intrusion of traitor Astartes, no sudden tear in reality. It begins with a cessation. One moment, the massive, cathedral-sized, distinct engines of the Golden Throne are thrumming with the violent power required to keep the Emperor's soul tethered to his rotting biological husk. The next, the rhythm falters. It is a subtle slip, a missed beat in a song that has been played perfectly since the fall of Horus. A high-ranking Muggos of the Adeptus Mechanicus, fused into the control dais by cables that have long since become part of his nervous system, pauses in his binary chanting. His mechadendrites twitch, hovering over the rune-encrusted consoles. The data slates scrolling across his retinal display freeze. The flow of power, the sacred Promethean blood of the machine, has stopped moving. The massive pistons that cycle the life support fluids hiss into stillness. The silence that follows is heavier than any bombardment. It is a vacuum that sucks the breath from the room, a sudden, terrifying void where the beating heart of the human race used to be. In the cavernous dark of the sanctum, the gold armor of the custodes glimmers in the dying light of the reactor displays. 300 companions stand motionless, their guardian spears held at perfect attention. They do not look at one another. They do not need to. Their transhuman physiology is flooded with a sudden, cold spike of adrenaline. They can hear the tech priests beginning to gibber in panic, a rising cacophony of binaric screeching as they attempt to diagnose a failure that should be impossible. The Golden Throne does not simply turn off. It is a device of such arcane complexity that even the Fabricator General of Mars does not truly understand its workings. It is a prison, a life support system, and a weapon all at once. If it fails, the webway gate beneath the palace opens, and Terra is consumed by the warp. Every custodian knows this. They grip their weapons tighter, their muscles coiling, waiting for the demonic incursion that must surely follow the machine's death. But the gate does not burst open. The warp does not spill forth. Instead, The withered, skeletal figure upon the throne, the master of mankind, simply exhales. The sound is dry and rattling, like parchment rubbing against stone, but in the sudden silence of the sanctum, it sounds like a thunderclap. The tech priests fall silent, their logic circuits overwhelmed by the impossibility of the biological data now flooding their sensors. The corpse is moving, not the twitching of galvanic reflex, but the deliberate movement of living matter. The psychic pressure in the room, usually a crushing weight that requires the strongest wills to withstand, suddenly evaporates. It is as if a storm has instantly cleared. The Astronomicon, the guiding beacon fueled by the Emperor's will, flickers out. Across the Sol system, navigators on patrol ships scream as they are suddenly blinded, their third eyes burning in their skulls. The light of the Emperor is gone. Darkness falls over Terra, absolute and suffocating. But inside the palace, a new light begins to kindle. It does not come from the machinery. It emanates from the dried, mummified flesh of the figure on the throne. Gold, not the metallic sheen of armor, but the true, immaterial gold of psychic power, begins to bleed from the cracks in his armor. The Captain General of the Adeptus Custodes, Trajan Valorous, steps forward, his boots ringing on the adamantium floor. He is a man who has stared down the greatest horrors the galaxy can produce, yet his hand trembles as he reaches for the vox grill of his helmet. He must alert the High Lords. He must seal the palace. He must order the execution of the attending tech priests to contain the secret, at least for a few moments. But before he can speak, the vox channels are flooded with static. The machine spirits of the palace's communication grid are shrieking. The doors to the sanctum, blast-shielded gates thick enough to withstand a nuclear impact, begin to grind shut of their own accord. The quarantine has not been ordered by the custodes. It has been enacted by the throne itself. The Emperor has locked them in. The silence is not merely an absence of noise. It is a physical weight, pressing against the eardrums with the violence of a deep-sea descent. For the first time in 10 millennia, the air in the Sanctum Imperialis is still. The massive atmospheric cyclers sized to ventilate a hive city have ground to a halt. The particulate matter, flakes of holy skin, dust from ancient scrolls, and the soot of incense, hangs suspended in the gloom, no longer churned by the violent convection of the machinery. The temperature begins to plummet immediately. Without the fusion fire of the reactor stacks driving the Golden Throne, the chill of the high Himalayas begins to seep through the miles of rock and plasteel. Frost begins to form on the coolant pipes, snapping and pinging as the metal contracts, a sound like breaking bones in the vast, vaulted dark. Mugos Dominus X 101, the senior attending tech priest of the shift, falls to his knees, his mechadendrites flailing like the limbs of a dying spider. To a disciple of the machine god, this is not a malfunction. It is an apocalypse. He is plugged directly into the diagnostic spirit of the throne, and where there should be a torrent of holy data, there is only a terrifying void. He screams in binary, a screech of static that bursts from his vox emitter, echoing harshly off the gold-plated bulkheads. The motive force, it has abandoned the vessel. The Omnia sleeps. The Omnia dies. His panic is infectious. Around the base of the dais, hundreds of lower-ranking engineers and servitors begin to convulse. Their cybernetic implants, tuned to the rhythm of the throne's operation, are suffering catastrophic feedback loops. Some claw at their own eyes. Others simply collapse, their nervous systems overloaded by the sudden severance of the connection that defined their existence. Trajan Valorous does not move. He stands like a statue of Oromite, his watcher's axe resting heavy in his gauntlet hands. Inside his helm, the tactical displays are flashing red, warning of total system failure across the entire palace grid. But he dismisses the runes with a blink click of his eyelids. His focus is entirely on the figure above him. He knows secrets that even the High Lords do not possess. He knows of the talisman of 7 hammers, the dead man's switch installed by Vulcan in the dying days of the heresy. If the Golden Throne fails, if the Emperor truly dies, the talisman is supposed to detonate, consuming Terra in a firestorm that would deny the throne world to chaos. Valoris braces himself for the end. He expects the ground to split, for the solar fire to consume them all in a final act of defiance. He counts the heartbeats. 1, 2, 10, 100. The fire does not come. The talisman remains dormant. This impossibility chills the Captain General more than the freezing air. If the failsafe has not triggered, it means the entity on the throne is not dead. But neither is he functioning as the anchor of the Imperium. The connection is severed, yet the subject persists. Valoris looks at his brothers, the companions. They are the Heteron Guard, the 300 greatest warriors of the 10,000, sworn to silence and vigilance. They have not flinched. Their spears are leveled not at the throne, but outward, toward the darkness of the hall, and inward, toward the panicking tech priests. They are waiting for the order to purge. If the Mechanicus tries to restart the machine, if they try to touch the master in this moment of impossible transition, they will be cut down. The tension is brittle, a taut wire ready to snap. Slowly, the light emanating from the Emperor shifts. For 10,000 years, the psychic aura of the Emperor has been a blinding, painful thing. A searing white-hot agony that speaks of constant struggle, of a will holding back the infinite pressure of the warp. It was a light that burned the eyes of those who looked upon it too long. But this new light is different. It is soft, pulsating with a rhythmic, oceanic cadence. It is the color of amber and old sunlight. It flows over the dried, blackened skin of the corpse, pooling in the hollows of his ribcage, knitting together ethereal strands over the cybernetic augmentations that have kept him prisoner. The smell of ozone and rot begins to fade, replaced by something ancient and forgotten. The scent of rain on dry earth, of ozone before a storm of raw, unfettered potential. A servitor, its lobotomized brain unable to process the cessation of its programming, shuffles forward, carrying a canister of sacred unguent intended for a piston that is no longer moving. It steps across the line of sanctity. Before the tech priests can shout a warning, a custodian moves. It is a blur of gold, faster than the human eye can follow. The guardian spear sweeps out, a single, fluid arc. The servitor is bisected at the waist, its upper half tumbling to the floor with a wet thud, the canister clattering away into the shadows. The violence is sudden and absolute. Hold! Valoris's voice booms from his vox grill, amplified to drown out the binary wailing. No one touches the throne. No one touches him. The machine has ended. The vigil has changed. The tech priests recoil, huddling together in the shadows of the inactive machinery. They are terrified of the custodes, but they are more terrified of the silence. Without the roar of the throne, they are alone in the dark with a god who has stopped screaming and started breathing. The shadows in the corners of the vast sanctum seem to lengthen, twisting into shapes that the mind refuses to acknowledge. Is the Geller field holding? Is the webway gate beneath them buckling? The uncertainty is a poison. Every shadow looks like a demon. Every creak of the cooling metal sounds like the laughter of the dark gods. And in the center of it all, the Emperor sits, no longer a lighthouse, but a gravity well, pulling the attention of every soul in the room toward the impossible reality of his awakening. The news travels not by vox, for the networks are choked with static, but by the oldest medium of all, fear. It seeps through the adamantium bulkheads of the inner palace, carried on the breath of terrified serfs and the frantic scuttling of servoskulls. It rises through the strata of the imperial dungeon, passing through the barracks of the Lucifer Blacks, the meditation chambers of the Grey Knights, and the gilded halls of the Senatorum Imperialis. The Astronomicon is out. The beacon has failed. The light of the Emperor has gone dark. In the High Council chamber, deep within the Grand Borealis wing of the palace, the High Lords of Terra are gathered for a scheduled conclave on grain tithes from the Ultima Segmentum. The room is a masterpiece of Gothic architecture, a cavernous hall of black marble and gold leaf, dominated by a circular table of polished obsidian. The air is always cool here, scented with expensive amasec and the faint, metallic tang of recycled air scrubbed to purity levels reserved only for the masters of humanity. But now the air is stale. The lumens flicker, their power feeds disrupted by the fluctuations deep in the palace grid. The High Lords, usually masters of their emotions, are fraying. Udia Raskian, the Fabricator General of Mars, is a towering mass of cybernetics, more building than man. His mechanical bulk occupies a reinforced section of the chamber, his multiple sensory arrays twitching as they struggle to pierce the jamming that has descended over the throne world. The data is incomplete. His synthesized voice grinds out, a sound like gravel in a turbine. The Omnisia's output has ceased. The motive force of the throne is null. My agents in the sanctum are silent. This is unacceptable. We must initiate the protocol of eternal vigilance. We must purge the lower levels. It is sabotage. Robot Gilliman is not present. The Lord Commander is light years away, fighting the Indomitus Crusade, leaving the governance of Terra to these men and women. And without the Primarch's stabilizing presence, their worst instincts are rising to the surface. Erthu Hemotalion, the master of the administratum, slams a withered hand onto the obsidian table. His skin is like parchment, his eyes milky with age and rejuvenation treatments that are beginning to fail. Sabotage? You speak of sabotage when the very stars have gone blind? The fleets are blind. Raskian, the navigators are screaming in their towers. The grain ships cannot translate. The tithe fleets are stranded in the warp. If the light does not return within the hour, hunger riots will consume the mid-levels by dawn. We must issue a statement. We must tell them it is a test. A holy test of faith. A lie. Cuts in the Abbess Sanctorum of the Adepta Sororitas Morven Val. She stands apart from the others, her power armor humming softly in the quiet room. Her hand rests on the pommel of her spear, her face a mask of grim determination. You cannot lie about the sun going out, Lord Hemotalion. The people feel it in their souls. The despair is already spreading. If we lie, we lose them. If we tell the truth, we break them. We must pray. We must arm the faithful and prepare for the end times. If the Emperor has turned his face from us, then we must prove we are worthy of his return. He has not turned his face, screams the ecclesiarch, Baldo, his heavy robes swirling as he paces the chamber floor. He is a fat man, his fingers dripping with jeweled rings, his face flushed with panic. He is testing us. It is as the prophecy of the seventh tome dictates. When the light fails, the true faithful shall burn with their own fire. We must purge the unbelievers. We must sacrifice 1 billion souls to relight the beacon. Bring me the prisoners. Empty the black cells. Feed the fire. We cannot let the light die. He is hysterical, his faith, a construct of ritual and power, crumbling before the reality of a silent God. He does not fear the demons. He fears the loss of his authority. If the Emperor is gone, who is the ecclesiarch? He is nothing. A man in a funny hat shouting at the void. The doors to the chamber boom. Not a knock, but a heavy, rhythmic thudding. The High Lords freeze. The custodes guard the council. But these are not the footsteps of custodians. The heavy oak doors, reinforced with iron bands, groan and splinter inward. Standing in the ruin of the entrance is not a demon, nor an assassin, but a messenger. A single Heteron guard, his armor blackened by the psychic discharge of the sanctum, his cloak torn. He does not bow. He does not salute. He steps into the room, and the temperature seems to drop another 10 degrees. The throne is silent, the custodian says, his voice a low growl that vibrates in the chests of the High Lords. The machinery has stopped. The Emperor wakes. The silence that follows is absolute. Raskian's mechadendrites freeze. The ecclesiarch stops his pacing, his mouth hanging open. Wakes. The word hangs in the air, alien and terrifying. They have prayed for it for 10,000 years. They have built an entire civilization on the promise of it. But now that it is here, the reality is a cold bucket of water to the face. If the Emperor wakes, the High Lords are obsolete. If the Emperor wakes, the ecclesiarchy is a heresy. If the Emperor wakes, the Imperium they have built, a corrupt, sprawling, inefficient monster, will be the first thing he destroys. Wakes! Hemotalion whispers, his voice trembling. But the life support, The golden throne. He has no need of it, the custodian replies, his eyes burning behind his lenses. He has commanded the doors to be sealed. He has commanded silence. You will issue no orders. You will send no fleets. You will wait. Judgment is coming. The custodian turns and leaves, leaving the masters of the galaxy alone in the dark. The seeds of denial are planted in that moment. They cannot accept this. They cannot accept that their power is gone. Raskian's logic circuits begin to spin a new narrative. It is a trick of the warp. A demon has possessed the corpse. The custodes are compromised. The ecclesiarch's mind races. It is a false messiah. A test of loyalty to the idea of the emperor, not the man. They look at each other, and in their eyes the decision is made. They will not yield. They will not step down. If the emperor has returned, he will have to take his throne back from them by force. The civil war has begun, not with a shot, but with a refusal to believe. Outside the palace walls, the panic is spreading like a plague. In the hives of Terra, the lumens fail as the power grid fluctuates. Darkness descends on the arcologies that house billions. The gangs, sensing weakness, spill out of the underhive. The Arbites are overwhelmed. But it is the silence of the psychic choir that drives the people mad. The constant, subconscious hum of the Astronomicon, a sound they didn't know they could hear until it was gone, has vanished. People fall to the ground, weeping, clawing at their ears. The preachers on the street corners scream that the emperor is dead, that the devils are coming. And in the great cathedrals, the statues of the emperor seem to look down with accusing eyes. The candles gutter and die. The bells toll, unbidden, a mournful dirge for an age that has ended. The first shot of the Terran Civil War is fired not in anger, but in confusion. It happens at the Lion's Gate, the massive spaceport complex that serves as the primary ingress for the endless stream of pilgrims and supplies feeding the throne world. The atmosphere is choked with the smog of 1,000,000 shuttles, a thick, oily haze that tastes of promethium and desperation. The crowds are a solid mass of humanity, a crushing tide of unwashed bodies, desperate prayers, and the stench of fierce sweat. They have been waiting for days, weeks, some for years, just to touch the outer walls of the palace. But now the gates are sealed. The great adamantium blast doors, decorated with reliefs of the Great Crusade, have slammed shut. The Vox speakers, usually blaring hymns and instructions, are silent. And the rumors are spreading like wildfire through dry grass. Asterisk, he is dead. The light is gone. The demons are here. Asterisk. Colonel Jaran Kell of the Cadian 88th, a regiment honored with the duty of palace defense, stands atop the battlements of the Lion's Gate. His uniform is crisp, his lost pistol polished, but his hands are shaking. He looks down at the sea of faces below, distorted by the haze and the flickering lumens. He sees not pilgrims, but a mob that is terrified, hungry, and starting to realize that no one is coming to save them. A bottle smashes against the wall below him, then a rock, then a lost bolt cracks through the air, scorching the stone near his boot. Hold fire! Kell roars into his Vox bead, but the discipline of the guard is fraying. These men are tired. They are scared. They have looked up at the sky and seen the stars blink out. They know what that means. The commissars are pacing the lines, bolt pistols drawn, executing anyone who shows sign of panic, but even they look pale. The fear is a physical thing, a cold dampness that seeps into the bones. Below, in the crush, a demagogue has climbed atop a stalled cargo hauler. He is a ragged figure, wrapped in scrolls and chains, his eyes wild. The false emperor has fallen, he screams, his voice amplified by a crude voxcaster. The corpse god is dead. The lords of Terra hoard the food while we starve in the dark. Storm the gates. Take back the light. The crowd roars, a sound like a breaking wave. They surge forward, pressing against the blast doors, climbing over one another. A frantic, mindless stampede. They're breaching the perimeter. A sergeant screams over the Vox. Open fire! For the Emperor! The lost guns of the Cadian 88th light up the night. It is a slaughter. The front ranks of the pilgrims are cut down, their bodies trampled by those behind them. But the mob is too large. They are driven by a madness that overrides self-preservation. They climb the piles of dead, clawing at the walls, throwing themselves at the defenders. And then, from the shadows of the spaceport, the real threat emerges. The inquisitorial stormtroopers of the Ordo Hereticus, the Red Hunters, move out from their staging areas. They are clad in crimson carapace armor, their hellguns humming with lethal charge. But they are not firing at the mob. They are firing at the Cadians. "Traitors!" screams Inquisitor Lord Karamazov, his throne of judgment striding through the smoke like a mechanical nightmare. The guard has failed. They have allowed the faithful to riot. Purge them. Purge the weak. Only the Inquisition can hold the palace. Chaos erupts on the walls. Guard fights stormtrooper. Lost-fire crosses in the air, a deadly lattice of red and green. Grenades detonate, throwing bodies into the air like ragdolls. The discipline of the Imperium turns in on itself. Colonel Kell falls, a hellgun bolt burning through his chest. His last sight, the golden eagle on the Inquisitor's banner. He dies not fighting Xenos or heretics, but the very institution he swore to protect. Deep within the palace, the war is different. It is quieter, deadlier. The Adeptus Custodes have moved to secure the approaches to the sanctum. They do not shout. They do not panic. They are the perfect killers. But they are facing an enemy they never expected. The Space Marines. The Imperial Fists, the Praetorians of Terra, have been garrisoned in the palace since the days of Dorn. They are loyal. They are staunch. But their loyalty is to the Imperium, to the structure, to the chain of command. And the High Lords have issued an order. The Custodes have gone rogue. They have assassinated the Emperor. Secure the throne. Captain Lysander of the First Company stands in the Hall of Lang, his thunder hammer crackling with energy. Across the hall, a squad of custodians blocks the way. They are taller than the Astartes, their armor more ornate, their presence more imposing. "Stand aside, custodian." Lysander rumbles, his voice amplified by his helm. "By order of the Senatorum Imperialis, we are to secure the sanctum. The Emperor is in danger." "The Emperor is awake," the custodian shield captain replies, his voice calm, devoid of emotion. "And he has judged you wanting. Lay down your arms, Astartes, or be destroyed." "We do not yield," Lysander growls. "For Dorn. For the Emperor." The clash is titanic. Two forces of transhuman warriors, the pinnacle of genetic engineering, colliding with the force of a freight train. Bolters roar, the explosive rounds detonating against auramite and ceramite. Power weapons clash with a sound like tearing metal. The Hall of Lung, a museum of history, is turned into a slaughterhouse. Statues of ancient heroes are smashed to rubble. Tapestries woven from the hair of saints are burned. The blood of demigods slicks the marble floor. It is a tragedy of Shakespearean proportions. Brothers fighting brothers because the truth has been twisted by fear. The Custodes are superior individually, their martial prowess unmatched. They move like liquid gold, their spears cutting through power armor as if it were paper. But the Imperial Fists have numbers, and they have the stubborn, unyielding discipline of their gene-sire. They form shield walls, locking their storm shields together, advancing step by bloody step. They are willing to die to fulfill their orders. And they do die. A custodian spins, his spear decapitating a Terminator. Another kicks an Astartes in the chest, shattering his fused ribcage. But for every custodian that falls, 10 Marines lie dead. The battle rages through the corridors of the palace, spilling into the courtyards and the basilicas. The Adeptus Mechanicus Scutarii legions, confused by conflicting orders, fire on everyone. Titans of the Legio Ignatum, the fire wasps, stand motionless in their hangars, their princeps arguing over the vox, unsure which god to obey, the machine god or the emperor. The sky above the palace is lit by the fires of burning shuttles and the flashes of orbital batteries firing on targets they cannot identify. Terra is burning. The throne world, the sacred heart of humanity, is tearing itself apart. And in the center of it all, the golden throne remains silent, the Emperor watching through the warp, his presence growing stronger with every drop of blood spilled in his name. Is this what he wanted? Is this the purge he deemed necessary? Or is this just the inevitable result of a species that has forgotten how to live without a master? The air in the Hall of Lying is thick with the smell of scorched ceramite and the copper tang of Astartes' blood. Lysander is on one knee, his armor breached, his hammer heavy in his hand. He looks up at the custodian standing over him, the guardian spear raised for the killing blow. Why? Lysander gasps, blood bubbling from his vox grill. We are loyal. Loyalty to the lie is treason to the truth. The custodian says, and brings the blade down. The blade does not fall. It halts, suspended by a force that is neither muscle nor machine. The guardian spear, a masterpiece of arcane craftsmanship that has tasted the blood of demon princes and Xenos warlords, vibrates in the custodian's grip. The air around them thickens, becoming viscous, like wading through deep water. The sounds of battle, the roar of bolters, the screams of the dying, the crackle of power fields, fade into a dull, distant thrum. The light in the Hall of Lung shifts again. The lumens overhead shatter, showering the combatants in sparks and glass. But the darkness does not hold. A golden luminescence bleeds from the walls themselves, from the very stones of the imperial palace. It is not the holy light of the Astronomicon. It is something older, rawer. It is the psychic resonance of a mind that has spent 10,000 years screaming into the abyss, now turning its attention inward. The custodian shield captain, a warrior who has not known fear since his creation, steps back. His weapon lowers not by his choice, but by a compulsion that overrides his transhuman will. He looks at Lysander, then at his own hands. The gold of his auramite armor is beginning to tarnish. Not with age but with heat. The psychic pressure is rising, cooking the air, turning the blood on the floor into hissing steam. He is here, the custodian whispers. It is not a statement of location. It is a statement of omnipresence. The scream of the Astronomicon's death does not stop at the edge of the soul system. It ripples outward, a tsunami of psychic silence crashing through the Imperium. For the navigators on board the millions of Imperial vessels scattered across the galaxy, it is a moment of supreme horror. They are the eyes of the fleet, the mutants sanctioned to look into the warp and see the path. They rely on the Emperor's light as a sailor relies on the North Star. When it vanishes, they are not just lost. They are blinded. On the bridge of the Eternal Crusader, the flagship of the Black Templars, High Marshal Helbrecht stands before the main oculus. The view outside is a swirling nightmare of purple and bruised black, the raw warp. They are in transit, hunting a splinter fleet of Hive Fleet Leviathan. The ship shudders violently, the Geller fields groaning under a sudden, immense pressure. "The light!" screams the ship's navigator, strapped into his blister pod high above the command deck. His voice is amplified through the bridge speakers, a shrill, terrified wail. "The beacon is gone. I can see nothing. The shadows, they are closing in." Helbrecht grips the railing, his knuckles white. "Steady," he roars. "Hold your course. The Emperor protects." But the Emperor is not protecting them. Not in the way they understand. The ship lurches as a warp current catches it, spinning the massive battle barge like a toy in a whirlpool. Alarms blare, hull breach in the lower decks, Geller field fluctuation in the engineerium. The reality of the ship begins to thin. Shadows detach themselves from the corners of the bridge, lengthening, twisting into clawed hands. The crew begins to murmur, then to shout. A servitor at the comm station rips its own interface cables out, spurting oil and blood, chanting in a tongue that hurts the ears. "Geller field failure imminent," the master of the void screams. "We are translating. Emergency translation." The Eternal Crusader rips itself out of the warp, emerging into real space with a violence that shears off antenna arrays and buckles armor plates. They are nowhere. The stars are unfamiliar. The galaxy map on the strategic hololith flickers and dies. They are alone in the dark, with no way to know where they are, or if Terra even exists anymore. This scene plays out across 10,000 systems. The blood of the Imperium, its trade, its communication, its troop movements, clots instantly. The Great Rift, the cicatrix maledictum, pulses with dark delight. Without the pressure of the Astronomicon pushing back against the tides of the Empyrean, the warp storms expand. Systems that were safe yesterday are swallowed today. The boundaries of reality dissolve. On the world of Vigilus, the sentinel at the mouth of the Nachmund gauntlet, the silence of the choir is felt as a physical blow. Marneus Calgar, chapter master of the Ultramarines, stands on the battlements of the primary hive. He is fighting a desperate war against the Black Legion, holding the only stable passage through the rift. He looks up at the sky, expecting to see the reinforcements promised from Terra. Instead, he sees the stars dim. The astropaths in the spire behind him have all simultaneously suffered cerebral hemorrhages, their brains boiled by the backlash of the Astronomicon's failure. Lord Calgar, a captain says, his voice hollow, "We have lost contact with the Indomitus fleet. We have lost contact with Macridge. We have lost contact with everything." Calgar does not blink. He is a son of Gilliman, a statesman as much as a warrior. He knows what this means. The logistics are broken. The ammunition will not come. The food will not come. The reinforcements will not come. They are isolated. Every world is now an island in a rising sea of monsters. "Then we stand alone," Calgar says, his voice grim. "Fortify the positions. Ration the bolter shells. If the Imperium dies today, we will make sure it dies fighting." But it is not just the external enemies that threaten the galaxy. It is the internal rot. As the news spreads, carried by the few desperate ships that manage to make short, blind jumps, the cohesion of the Imperium shatters. Governors, realizing they are cut off from the High Lords, declare independence. Why pay tithes to a throne that can no longer protect you? Why send your sons to die in distant wars when the orcs are on your doorstep? The Pax Imperialis, the peace of the gun, evaporates. In the Segmentum Solar, the War Master of the battle fleet, Admiral Cabs, stares at the tactical plot. The icons of his fleet are blinking out one by one. Not destroyed, but turning. Mutiny. The captains are panicking. Some want to rush back to Terra to see if the rumors are true. Others want to flee to the fringes, to carve out petty kingdoms before the end comes. The discipline of the Navy, held together by tradition and fear, snaps. They are firing on each other. His flag lieutenant whispers, watching the augurs. The sword of retribution has engaged the Emperor's mercy. They are fighting over supplies. Civil war is not a grand, organized conflict. It is a messy, chaotic unraveling. It is a billion small betrayals. It is a planetary governor hoarding grain while the hive below starves. It is a regiment of guard turning on their commissars. It is a Space Marine chapter deciding that they are the only true inheritors of the Emperor's will and purging a nearby system for heresy. The galaxy bleeds not from a single wound, but from a million cuts. And in the darkness the Xenos watch. The Necron dynasties, awakening from their slumber, see the chaotic energy signatures of a species in its death throes. The Silent King watches from the void between galaxies, calculating. The Tyrannid hive minds, sensitive to the psychic shockwave, recoil and then refocus. The prey is wounded. The prey is confused. The great devourer changes course, turning its tendrils toward the systems that have gone dark. The orcs, sensing the biggest fight in history, start their engines. The galaxy is a carcass, and the scavengers are gathering. But the most terrifying reaction comes from the warp itself. The Chaos Gods do not laugh. They do not celebrate. They pause. The great game, the eternal struggle between Khorne, Nurgle, Tsench, and Slaanesh stutters. They feel the change on Terra. They feel the awakening of the anathema. For 10,000 years, he has been a passive obstacle, a dam holding back the water. Now the dam is moving. The water is being pushed back. The Emperor is not just a soul in the warp anymore. He is becoming a warp god in his own right. a god of order, of tyranny, of blinding, searing light. And he is hungry. In the eye of terror, Abaddon the Despoiler stands on the bridge of the vengeful spirit. He looks at the golden light that is beginning to bleed into the warp, burning away the demons, calming the storms with a terrifying, authoritarian finality. He grips the talon of Horus. He has fought for 10,000 years to kill a corpse. Now he realizes he has to fight a god. He is coming, Abaddon growls. Prepare the fleets, all of them. We strike for Terra, not to conquer, but to survive. The war for Terra has raged for 3 days. 3 days of darkness, lit only by the fires of burning hab blocks and the strobe flashes of orbital lances striking the surface. The Imperial Palace, a continent-sized fortress that has stood inviolate since the heresy, is breached. Not by the Black Legion, not by orcs, but by the desperate, maddened forces of the Imperium itself. The walls of the Sanctum Imperialis are scarred by lost fire. The Eternity Gate stands closed, but the plaza before it is a killing ground. Here, the final confrontation begins. The High Lords have mobilized everything they have left. The Lucifer Blacks, the Palatine Guard, the remnants of the Imperial Fists who sided with the Council, and the fanatical mobs of the Ecclesiarchy led by the hysterical Ecclesiarch Baldo. They are massed at the foot of the steps, a sea of red robes, black armor, and desperate faith. They believe they are saving the Emperor from his own custodians. They believe the silence is a test, and that by storming the throne, they will prove their worth. Opposing them, standing on the steps of the Eternity Gate, are the Adeptus Custodes. The 10,000 are now fewer than 5,000. Their armor is battered, their cloaks torn, but they are unbroken. They stand in silence, a wall of gold against the tide of madness. Behind them, the massive gates are beginning to glow. The metal is heating up, turning from bronze to cherry red to blinding white. The air shimmers with heat haze. Ecclesiarch Baldo climbs atop a rhino transport, his robes stained with soot, his face wild. He holds aloft his staff of office, a golden eagle topped with a skull. "Behold!" he screams, his voice cracking. "The traitors block the way. They keep us from him. They have killed the Holy Father and seek to rule in his stead. Charge. Charge for the God Emperor. Let his light burn the heretics." The mob roars, a sound of pure religious ecstasy mixed with terror. They surge forward. The Lucifer Blacks level their weapons. The Imperial Fists rev their chainswords. It is a suicide charge, a wave of bodies crashing against a cliff. The Custodes do not fire. They do not move. They wait. The Eternity Gate explodes. It is not a detonation of explosives. It is a detonation of reality. The massive doors, meters thick, simply disintegrate, turning into dust and light in an instant. A shockwave of pure psychic force rolls out from the sanctum, knocking the front ranks of the attackers off their feet. The rhino transport flips over, crushing the ecclesiarch beneath its bulk. The mob falters, their screams dying in their throats. Out of the blinding white light, a figure steps. He is not the giant in golden armor depicted in the statues. He is not the benevolent grandfather preached in the sermons. He is a horror of light and shadow. He stands perhaps 10 feet tall, but his size seems to fluctuate, expanding to fill the sky, then shrinking to the size of a man. He is clad in armor that looks like it is made of solidified starlight, shifting and flowing over a body that is still, undeniably, a corpse. The skin is tight against the skull, the lips pulled back in a rictus grin of eternal agony. But the eyes are gone. In their place are twin suns, burning with a cold, terrible intelligence. The Emperor of mankind has risen. The silence that falls over the plaza is absolute. Even the wounded stop screaming. The wind stops blowing. The fires seem to freeze. Every soul present feels the weight of his gaze. It is not a gaze of love. It is a gaze of judgment. It is the look of a man who built a house, left for a moment, and returned to find it filled with vermin. He does not speak with a voice. He speaks directly into their minds. It is a sound like a planetary crust cracking, a voice that tastes of iron and blood. *+ Neil. Plus asterisk. It is not a request. It is a command written into the genetic code of every human being. The mob drops. The Lucifer Blacks drop. The Space Marines, transhuman warriors who know no fear, fall to their knees, their armor grinding against the stone. Even the custodes bow their heads, their spears clattering to the ground. The Emperor walks forward. He does not walk on the ground. He floats inches above it, the stone cracking beneath his shadow. He looks at the High Lords, cowering in their command bunker, watching through remote feeds. He looks at the ecclesiarchy priests, clutching their rosaries. He looks at the Space Marines, proudly displaying the Aquila on their chests. Plus you have failed. Plus, the thought voice is a hammer blow. Asterisk plus I gave you truth. You built a religion. I gave you science. You built superstition. I gave you a galaxy. You built a prison. Plus asterisk. He raises a hand. It is a skeletal claw, wreathed in golden fire. He points at the banners of the ecclesiarchy, the symbols of the imperial cult. Plus burn. Plus, the banners ignite, not just the ones in the plaza. Across Terra, in every cathedral, every shrine, every Hablock altar, the symbols of the imperial creed burst into flame. The statues of the emperor crumble. The holy books turn to ash. The priests who have spent their lives preaching his divinity feel their tongues burn in their mouths. It is a global purge, instantaneous and terrifying. The Emperor looks at the Space Marines. He looks at the chapter master of the Imperial Fists, who is trying to stand, trying to speak. Asterisk plus you are broken tools. You fight for a corpse. I am no corpse. I am the Omnia. I am the warp. I am the end. Plus asterisk. He clenches his fist. The Space Marines in the plaza scream as their armor begins to constrict. The machine spirits of their war gear, loyal to the Omnia, turn on them. Servos lock. Reactors overload. They are trapped in their own ceramite coffins. The Emperor continues to walk, down the steps, past the kneeling masses. He is not here to save the Imperium. He is here to dismantle it. He is here to finish the great work he started 10,000 years ago. But the method has changed. He no longer needs humanity to be enlightened. He needs them to be obedient. He no longer seeks to starve the Chaos Gods. He seeks to consume them. The Golden Throne was a life support system. Now the Emperor is the system. He expands his psychic presence, reaching out to the Astronomicon. He reignites it, but the light is different. It is not the guiding beacon of old. It is a searchlight. It sweeps the galaxy, burning away the shadows. Where it touches the warp, demons scream and dissolve. Where it touches the minds of the weak, they burn out. On the other side of the galaxy, Robot Guilliman feels the change. He falls to his knees on the bridge of his flagship, clutching his head. He feels his father's mind brush against his own. It is cold. It is alien. It is devoid of the humanity he remembers. Father, Guilliman whispers. The answer comes back, echoing across the stars. Asterisk plus there is no father. There is only the Emperor, and the Emperor requires order. Plus asterisk.